What is going on? I'm sorry, I got a lot of glitches. I apologize, folks. You're listening to the Urban Sports Scene. I'm Wole. The homie Ray Jeezy is out. But you can also check us out on our website, which is www.urbansportscene.com. You know what? I haven't talked college football in such a long time. I could have talked it last year, but I was in Nigeria when Michigan won it all last year, but I watched it from Nigeria, and I was so excited. But you know what? This college football playoff thing is so lit that I just had to talk. I had to talk about it, and I had to bring in an amazing guest. Before we talk about all that, let me knock down some particulars. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and other podcast platforms. Just search the Urban Sports Scene. Make sure to subscribe to the Urban Sports Scene YouTube channel. If you're on here right now, hit that red subscribe button. Also, like the video. Once you like it, it does great for the algorithm. So anything that's dealing with this particular topic, we jump up on the algorithm as soon as you all like it and chat, and also hit us with a comment. So make sure you do that as well. Don't forget to tweet us at Urban Sports Scene. Hit us up on IG and TikTok at Urban Sports Scene, and like our Urban Sports Scene Facebook page. Also, join our Urban Sports Scene Facebook group. Search Urban Sports Scene, sports bloggers, sports podcasters, and sports debates. You can also check us out on our weekly NFL picks on the NFL Football Garbage Time website. Just go to www.footballgarbagetime.com. It's part of the Urban Sports Scene versus the Football Garbage Time Pick'em Challenge. Yo, I am trash in that challenge. My record was so bad, I decided to give up. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm not usually don't call myself a quitter, but I really was a quitter this year. After I was I couldn't get out of the basement, I was like, I'm over it. But yeah, make sure you check out the other guys because they're picking pretty well. So make sure you check them out. They're cool cats. All right. Let's get into our tradition, the pregame. Here's what we have on tap. Co-host of the Always Talking Ball podcast, Tyler Nohe, will join me to talk about the college football playoff semifinals. We already saw an exciting game between the Irish and the Nittany Lions. It was amazing. The Irish beat the Nittany Lions 27-24, nail-biting game. But let me introduce our guests. What is going on? I'll make sure I do this correctly. What is going on, Tyler?
What's going on, Wole? How you doing? Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for being on. I want to make sure there we go. I have to make sure that it's all
production
right there. So Tyler, thanks for being on, man. Before we talk about the actual game, can you let our listeners know, our viewers and listeners know about your podcast?
Yeah, Always Talking Ball podcast. Me and my buddy Lance started it about 16 months ago before the start of the 2023 season. You can find us on Apple, Spotify. We're on YouTube as well. On X at Always Talk Ball, on Instagram, TikTok. Put out some cool videos. We think they're cool. Kind of just driving some interaction with some fans. And we just love watching college football. And we're going to talk to each other about it anyway. So might as well record it, put it on video, and we're just talking ball with people.
What got you started on making this podcast? What was the thing that
I mean, me and Lance, we've been friends for, almost 3 years now. Interesting story how we met. That'll be a story for another time. But we kind of just were texting each other throughout the 2022 season. Like, dude, we should start a podcast. We're going to talk about this anyways. Let's just do it. Finally got around to just kind of, hey, let's get some equipment. Let's get some microphones. Let's get some, use our cameras here on the computer. And so we started it back in August of 23, and we've seen some tremendous growth, and we love doing it and hope to do it for much longer.
Folks, I was watching the podcast. It's an amazing podcast. It's so insightful. I loved your guest. I actually was spot on. He was spot on too about his assessment of the game last night. But yeah, it's such an insightful podcast. Kind of got me amped to go back to watching college football. I won't lie to you. So it's it's a very insightful podcast about college football.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We try to have, as many guests on as we can. Obviously, Chris Vanini from The Athletic was on, and then Jake Crane from Crane and Company was on a couple weeks ago. And obviously, the college football playoff being here and some of the brand names we have in the semifinals has really driven up the conversation, and people are just kind of interested to see how this first 12-team playoff is going to finish out.
Before I get into the actual game, what is your thought? What are your thoughts on the 12-team playoffs? Are you for it, or are you against it, or you're did it change your mind to a point where now you're like, okay, this is dope? What is your thought process on the actual playoff system?
Yeah, when it first came out, I mean, I'm always for more college football. I'm always for watching more games. We knew going into it that there were going to be tweaks that needed to be done. Obviously, Some of the conference champions getting first round buys has been a lot of talk. Kind of how they select the teams, especially teams 9 through 11, 9 through 12, kind of focusing on strength of schedule. It was
Mm-hmm.
always going to be a hot topic. You're always going to be focusing on that 13th team, kind of like you were focusing on the 5th team,
Mm-hmm.
team playoff. You're kind of focusing on the first team out and whether or not they deserve to be in over other teams. I think kind of just the semifinals have produced, obviously, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you don't hear much talk anymore, like you heard a couple weeks ago about
Yeah.
Indiana shouldn't be in or SMU shouldn't be in. I think that having these 4 teams in, and obviously the game we had last night has proven that at least in the first year, in my mind, the system has worked.
Yeah, I think it's kind of successful because, like, what you saw last night, the Final Four, I think, makes it successful. And you got these teams playing good football, down the stretch, and you can't make the argument like, a lot of time, a lot of years, just like, oh, this SC team got robbed. Like Georgia had an opportunity to play when they played one of these tougher teams in Georgia, and they knocked out Georgia. You know what I mean? So it's not like these teams they didn't avoid the route. Put it that way, they didn't avoid toughness. They played some of the tougher teams, and they kind of got through it, and they got to this point. So
Right.
to your point, I feel like that excuse is knocked out because, to be honest, the weaker teams got eliminated anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm with you on that. All right. So last night in the Orange Bowl, Notre Dame defeated Penn State in a classic 27-24 win. First off, what were your overall thoughts on that game?
Man, it was a tale of two halves, right? First half coming out, Penn State looked faster. They looked more dominant in the trenches. They were pushing Notre Dame's defensive line around.
Yes.
They were, getting push and getting pressure on the quarterbacks, whichever quarterback was in. You saw Notre Dame struggle to move the ball in the first half. You saw them obviously, suffer some more injuries, most notably to the left tackle and the right guard. And then obviously, 2.5 minutes to go in the game or in the first half, Riley Leonard goes down, hits his head pretty hard on the turf, kind of gets his bell rung, and they're down 10-0 at that time. And Steve Angeli, backup quarterback for Notre Dame, comes in and completes 6 to 7 passes in a 2-minute drill. Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, were not afraid to let him sling it. Honestly, in the past, he's been more of a polished passer than Riley Leonard, and he hangs in the pocket a little more. Riley Leonard, kind of his first instinct, if his first read's not there, I'm going to tuck it and run, which he can do. He can do a lot better than Steve Angeli. But Angeli going down and getting 3 points before the end of the half, obviously, in what ended up being a close game, was huge for Notre Dame, kind of in mounting their comeback in the second half.
Yeah, I agree, because initially, like you said, I just felt like Penn State was winning the line of scrimmage battle. That was like the thing, like, and we'll talk about Abdul Carter, like, good God. But just to your point, just having Angeli come in there and, like, I believe it was, like you said, 6 or 7, 44 yards, and for him to, like, lead that drive for a touchdown, and the way he threw the ball, I think it's it's easy to throw the ball if somebody's open, but I felt like he threw people open, and when he threw it, when he hit his receivers, he hit them on stride so they can make a play after the catch, and he just looked calm in that moment, and it's hard, right? It's a backup. It's an opportunity to get to the national championship game. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to make things worse. You know what I mean? And truth be told, in your mindset, you're thinking to yourself, I could probably finish this game out. You know what I mean? So it's like all this pressure is on me, and to come out there and perform and lead the team to a scoring drive when this team definitely need to score before the half, knowing they're going to get the ball back in the second half first. So it gives you a kind of some confidence, some upbeat momentum, thinking, all right, we score here, we get a touchdown again, we can tie this thing at 10-10. So I just felt like, to your point, I thought that was huge. I feel like that kid deserves a lot of flowers.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we've seen that in football how many times where either a coach takes out a starter to try to provide a spark, or starter goes down and the defense isn't really prepared. They haven't watched a ton of film on the backup, and it's just a different type of game. Like, they had spies on Riley Leonard for most of the first half because they thought he was going to run, and you got to switch up your entire defense. The ball probably comes out of Angeli's hand a little bit quicker than Riley Leonard, a little more zip on the ball. And it just, whether or not coaches take a guy out or they get injured, it kind of provides a little bit of a spark for a team, like you said.
So what was your thought process when Leonard went down? Did you think, like, did you have confidence in Leonard was going to go ahead and snap into mode and say, okay, we're gonna be Notre Dame's gonna be okay, or did you feel like this is kind of a scary situation for Notre Dame?
Yeah, as soon as he went down, he kind of put his hands up by his head,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of got up with a little wobbly, and you could tell. I just thought like as a concussion for sure,
Yeah.
but like you and I were talking a little bit, NFL and college are a little different on that area where college, they still do the cognitive tests and all that.
Yeah.
And they do have a baseline test that Riley Leonard talked about in the post-game press conference that he took in the summer. So they base it off of that.
Mm.
And he was good. He said he thought he was good. He just had to go through all the tests, and they wanted to take their time. Obviously, they had halftime coming up, so they had a good 30 minutes there to kind of test him out and everything. And so, but you tried to search Riley Leonard's name on social media last night during halftime,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of fans out there who wanted to see Steve Angeli continue on in that game.
I can tell.
Yeah, and I just think Marcus Freeman, like there was no way Riley Leonard had gotten him to that point. If he was healthy to go, there's no way he was going to go away from Riley Leonard.
Yeah, because I was one of them. Mentally, I was like, when I was watching the game, I was like, dang, keep that kid in. Like, it's just that, like you said, there's something about the way he was just throwing the football. It was calm. He was staying in the pocket. He was staying strong in the pocket. And the passes is not, again, it's easy. Obviously, when you watch the college game, a lot of guys are open. So they're throwing to an open dude. But this guy was literally throwing the ball. He was throwing individuals open. And then again, like as a receiver, you want to be able to do something with the football when you catch it. Like, and he was putting them in positions to get yards after catch. I was really impressed with him. I'm not gonna lie. I was really impressed with the kid.
I mean, this is a guy, Angeli was going to be the starter this year if Riley Leonard had not transferred in. So the coaching staff has a ton of confidence in him, and he played in the Sun Bowl last year, and he went out and threw for over 300 yards. So, I mean, he's got the talent. So it was no surprise to a lot of Notre Dame fans that he came out and did what he did.
Yeah, I was like real surprised. I was impressed. I was very impressed. So, all right, speaking on the other side about the Penn State, we talked about it. They had a 10-0 lead before Angeli came in there and sparked this team for that last drive in the first half. Do you feel like they missed their moment in that first half to kind of to step on Notre Dame's necks?
I mean, that first scoring drive they had where they had to settle for a field goal, Drew Aller had Nick Singleton open in the flat, kind of underthrew the ball, but Nick Singleton still should have caught it. That should have been 7 for Penn State. They get the ball back later in the first half, and I mean, at that point, they pretty much stepped on Notre Dame's throat. I mean, 15 plays, 90 yards, just absolutely. I think they ran it on 13 of those plays. And they just, I mean, that was the drive. They were pushing Notre Dame around. They were faster. Notre Dame just looked tired and they looked worn out. Honestly, the first drive of the game when Penn State was out there and we already knew Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, was going to have a ton of pre-snap motion. And they did it. They were trying to get Notre Dame thinking, trying to get their eyes moving. They were going on different cadences to try to slow the blitz down because Notre Dame blitzes on 45% of their defensive snaps. And I think that drive right there, even though Penn State didn't score, they got Notre Dame off balance the rest of the first half. And they were just off balance the entire first half. And Penn State's defense played really well. You talked about Abdul Carter earlier. I mean, that dude, top 10 NFL draft pick. He just declared for the NFL draft today. He's a top 10 pick. He's out there playing with one arm, basically.
Exactly.
It was unbelievable. And one of the evidences was on that drive that Angeli played, he got hit from behind and fumbled the ball.
Yeah.
And you see Abdul Carter kind of under there trying to get it. He literally couldn't use his left arm to try to get that ball. He had to use his right arm, which probably contributed to Notre Dame getting the ball back. And but Abdul Carter, I mean, he was absolutely wrecking the game the entire first half.
I thought Micah Parsons was mean. And I thought he was like the scariest dude I've seen in Penn State.
Yeah.
And I've seen LeVar Arrington when I was younger. But this kid, because of what you just talked about, playing with one arm and to still do that, like, because he was a problem the whole game. And I was sitting there like, geez, like, obviously, Notre Dame's trying to do whatever it takes to trying to contain this dude, but to do that with one arm and knowing that you are the vital point of this team's defense and to still do it, I was just so impressed with that. I was just so impressed with him. But yeah, to your point, to your point, Penn State had some long drives to a point where you're right. like not squandering would probably be a hard thing because that's the way they had to play, right? They had to play. That's the style they have to play. They're not an explosive team in terms of getting quick points. So, grind to get out. So both teams are like kind of like that. They're a grind out team.
Yeah.
So to your point, I totally agree with you. So can we talk about like the job of Coach Marcus Freeman? He's done this year, having that tough loss in the beginning of the season, reeled off, all these wins in a row, and now he's here. He's in the championship game. You talk about his what he's done this year as the head coach for the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think when he came in 2022, obviously after Brian Kelly left, and Brian Kelly's catching a lot of flack. Obviously, today for he made some comments a couple of years back that he was leaving to go to LSU where he could compete for championships. Like he couldn't do that at Notre Dame, and the guy took them to the national championship in 2012 and a couple more playoffs. So I feel like he had thought he just reached the ceiling and he reached what Notre Dame was capped at. And Marcus Freeman coming in, obviously just tried to instill a culture for the first couple of years, and he absolutely did. His downfall the first 3 years has been losing games like that Northern Illinois and like Marshall last year, and to a not very good Stanford team last year, but really competing in the big games, like losing to Ohio State by 3 last year. Like they competed well in that game. They had to lead all the way till 3 seconds left. I was at the Texas A&M game week 1 this year. And that was an incredible high coming off that game. And then, like you mentioned, week 2, you come back home and Northern Illinois comes in there and just does what they did. And they didn't make excuses about it. Everyone kind of chalked them up as a loss. They thought they were done. And this dude's culture that he has instilled is second to none. And Notre Dame fans could not be happier with Marcus Freeman as their head coach, especially versus Brian Kelly, the way he's recruiting, the way he's building this team, and the fact that Notre Dame, I think, is set up very well in this new era of college football where we have the 12-team playoff, we have NIL, we have the transfer portal. Guys who go to school at Notre Dame and go to play football at Notre Dame, they care a lot more about academics than other schools. And you don't see a lot of guys leaving in the transfer portal from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You don't see them going into the transfer portal and getting a lot of talent either. When they do, it's guys like Riley Leonard. It's guys like Bo Collins, wide receiver from Clemson. It's guys like RJ Oben, defensive end from Duke, who made that strip sack against Georgia last week. It's kind of like key pieces here and there, but they're not overhauling entire rosters like they are at Ole Miss or Florida State or Colorado. So Freeman's building a culture from inside out. He's built a ton of depth. Obviously, you can see with all the injuries they've had.
Yeah,
they are building a ton of depth, which, again, a lot of these SEC powers, you're having guys leave, if they're not going to play year 1 or year 2, they're leaving and they're going to a school like, Penn State or something like that. And so their depth has been ravaged. And Freeman, all the way up to that first half last night, he goes into halftime. He basically says, guys, it's still all about running the ball and stopping the run like we thought was going to happen at the beginning of this game. And the adjustments he made, the adjustments Al Golden made and Mike Denbrock made in the second half was really what got this team over. And I just think the fact that he's created this culture at Notre Dame is really gotten him to this point.
Yeah, I like when coaches do it that way. I'm kind of sick of the NIL. I'm sick of NIL and I'm sick of the transfer portal. So I'm just
it's hard to keep up with.
It is. Like you kind of, I'm going to age myself, but you kind of I grew up in a time where, you kind of, and it's the same thing for college basketball too. I grew up in a time where you can kind of like grow up or, grow up with certain players, or you kind of can like see the progression of a certain player. Right. So you kind of feel like, okay, this kid was this year. He was that this year. Like he kind of grew himself to be this particular person. Now everybody wants to kind of like, in the I want it now mentality to a point where if I don't get any playing time, I'm transferring here rather than kind of working with the grind. Sometimes the grind. There are situations where kids are getting cheated. Don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of situations where you're working with the grind. That's why even though he doesn't need the money, that's why I like Archie Manning's son so much, because it's like all right, and he doesn't need the money, right? But still, like there is an element of like, confidence in yourself saying, all right, man, if I'm not getting this opportunity here, I can go elsewhere. But it's kind of endearing though to say like, I'm just going to wait it out. When it's my time, it's my time. You know what I mean? And
Arch Manning could go transfer to 95% of the schools and start immediately. And the fact that he's sticking it out at Texas, and I think he just, that to me is trusting in your abilities too. Like, I know I'm good enough. There's no reason to go anywhere else if I love my situation.
Exactly. So, but I kind of wish that would, kind of be the same thing. So I do like that I like that he keeps the same kid. He's not trying to he grooming his kids. Like he's grooming kids that he's recruited from high school or, some, even, other transfers, but you're grooming these kids to a point where now, like, all right, you're building a real program. Like to me, that's how you build a real program, in my opinion. I know it can be outdated, but that's how I feel. And I kind of like that. So let's go on the Penn State side, because I know even here, because we have like in the DMV, the Washington D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, we have some ties to James Franklin. There are some ties to James Franklin, and he gets a lot of flack from even when you see on social media from Penn State fans about him. He got to the semi, so I think that's pretty good. But I want to know, of what he did yesterday, is he safe at Penn State to you?
Yeah, I think he's safe. I just think the issue with Penn State is they went through this entire season and nobody thinks anything differently of Penn State than they have already thought before. Like, they didn't beat Ohio State. They didn't beat Oregon. They didn't beat Notre Dame. Their schedule set them up for getting to the college football playoff, obviously with the 12 teams now.
Yeah.
They had the easiest path in the first round in the quarterfinals, playing SMU and Boise State. The numbers don't lie. Like, for James Franklin, he's a very good coach. And when he has more talent than a team, he beats them. He has no issues with that. When he has equal or less to talent, he usually struggles. Obviously, he's 1-15 against top 5 opponents while at Penn State. And I mean, I don't know who's going to do better. Like, who would do better at Penn State, right? I mean, I guess if you get someone like an Urban Meyer or Nick Saban, like, sure, they may do better, but those are pipe dreams. And Nick Saban, isn't coming to Penn State. James Franklin, he's going to be just fine. Like, eventually they're going to get over the hump. Like, it's going to happen. He's going to win, a big game. But unfortunately for him, for whatever, and I don't necessarily blame last night on him.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can, if he kneeled the ball out last night when it was 24-all and they go to overtime, then he's going to get chastised for that. He's getting chastised for going for it and, having Drew Aller try to make a play. Like, Drew Aller making that decision's not on James Franklin at some point. And I know the coach is going to get all the flack, he's going up there on the microphone, but I don't think that loss solely is on James Franklin last night.
How do you feel do you feel bad? How bad do you feel for Drew Aller? Because that's a situation where, and he's a kid. That's why I don't go this tough on kids like that in college. It's a situation.
I'll push back on that because
go for it.
Because how much money do you think Drew Aller's making now? Like,
that's true.
These guys wanted to be paid like professionals, so you got to be treated like the professional you want to be.
No, know what? That's a good point. Yeah. I'm thinking about it like you're not getting paid. So you're right. You know what? Let me go back on this aspect. Like, how to be in that situation, knowing that you got to be. There's no need to take a risk because you got overtime. There's no need to you got overtime. That's your backup plan. If you see it open, then you throw it. If you gotta if it's not open, then you just gotta tuck it, take the sack, right? Yeah. That's just more thing you gotta do as a quarterback, especially at playing high level football. Regardless, how do you think? All right, I'll put it this way: do you put that loss on him, or do you feel like that Penn State as a whole did certain things to lose that football game?
I think Penn State as a whole. Again, Aller's stats last night and obviously in the other two games in the playoffs were not great. He completed like 53% of his passes. He doesn't have any wide receivers. Like, not a single wide receiver had a reception last night in a semifinal of a college football playoff game. Like, it's tough to win in 2024.
True.
And I think for him on that last drive, like, any competitor wants to go out and they dream about this their entire lives. They want to go out and they want to lead the game-winning drive. They want to be Tom Brady. They want to be Patrick Mahomes, right? They want to lead the game-winning drive. I just think he got caught up in a situation where he was trying to make a play, and it was a bad decision. I mean, anytime you're throwing across your body like that, across the field, and you're late, And the Notre Dame DB Christian Gray made a heck of a play on it, but you just can't do that. I just think I think Penn State as a whole just I don't know what Drew Aller's going to do in the future. Like
he's coming back to school.
He's going to come back to school. And I mean, there was talks from like NFL people like, oh, they're going to be watching the playoffs closely. And you could see it on like one or two throws. Like he's makes some NFL style throws, but the consistency is not there. And I almost wonder too, if he wouldn't benefit from kind of what Carson Beck is doing at Georgia now, where he's into the transfer portal.
Yeah, he is.
And kind of what Cam Ward did. I mean, he was at Washington State. Last year. He went to Miami. And Will Howard, he was at Kansas State. And now he's at Ohio State for one more year. Would Drew Aller benefit entering the transfer portal and going to a different place, kind of a different change of scenery, maybe a different offense where he can, unlock some more of his talents, improve his draft stock? I don't know. I mean, I know he's pretty loyal to Penn State, but it's I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, you feel bad for him. You feel bad for any guy who makes a mistake in that time of the game to, and people are only going to look at that and they're only going to say, oh, you lost them the game. Like, everybody says sports and football not decided on one play. So, but tough for him.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I saw it happening because as soon as the rush happened, I'm like, don't throw this ball. Like I saw it. I was watching. I was like,
it was a delayed blitz, and it just caught him off guard.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is a pick. The first thing came to my mind, like, this is going to be a pick. I know it's going to be a pick.
Now honestly, he was making terrible decisions all night.
Yeah,
I mean, he threw that one pick into triple coverage and got bailed out by that pass interference.
Yeah, exactly.
He got bailed out with another pick, with the defensive holding. So his decision making all night, unless guys were wide open or unless he was throwing to Tyler Warren, like it wasn't good.
Yeah, because I'm glad you mentioned the talk about pro scouts saying like he could be an NFL quarterback and this, that, and the other. Because I was listening to the commentators talk about it, and I was like, nah, he's not ready. And it's not because he doesn't have weapons too. It's just because of what you're talking about. It's the decision making.
Yeah.
Because I'll use an example, and I know this is extreme, but it's fair enough. Like Andrew Luck didn't have talent in Stanford like that around him. He didn't have talented playmaking wide receivers. But what made Andrew, and this obviously Andrew Luck had a grade like a John Elway coming out of the draft. So I'm not comparing the two in terms of talent wise. But Andrew Luck, in terms of decision making, Andrew Luck knew, all right, hey, I'm gonna take the safer throw. I'm not making dumb decisions in college like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just think there's a level of if you're gonna play with, if you're not gonna have great skill position players like in terms of wide receivers or whatnot. I mean, you got a dog at tight end. Like, don't get me started on that tight end. But if you don't have, top speed or top end wide receivers, there are ways you could kind of negate that in the college game. You know what I mean? And I just didn't see it out of him to a point where I'm like, he's going to definitely be an NFL quarterback. It may be better, like you said. I agree with you. If Penn State doesn't recruit top end receivers or get transfer portal receivers, guys from the transfer portal that are kind of explosive for him, then I think it's for his career. He's best suited to transfer though.
Yeah, they've gotten a couple of transfer portal wide receivers already this year, one from USC. But they got guys last year. I mean, they got Julian Fleming from Ohio State. He didn't do much. I mean, so they were just absent. And really it happened all year, but especially last night. And I know, Notre Dame's DBs their secondary is ridiculous.
Oh, but crazy.
And Notre Dame didn't fear their wide receivers at all. They put their corners on islands all night. And it's up. I mean, it's kind of like Angeli at the first half. Like you said, he was throwing guys open. Like Aller eventually has to throw a guy open, and you just saw kind of some off balance, tentative throws from him all night, even when guys were wide open.
Yeah, that was my thing. I just thought like he didn't stand out to me. He didn't stand out to me. I felt, but I like Leonard more than I like him, and I think Leonard didn't have the greatest game throwing the football either. But I liked his moxie.
Yeah, I mean, and Leonard, obviously he wins you games with his legs too, and Aller can do that, but I don't think you look at either of those guys last night and be like, they're going to be NFL quarterbacks. Aller has more potential, obviously, than Riley Leonard, but that's just kind of his size and his prototype. But I mean, he stays at Penn State or he goes elsewhere. He stays in college one more year. He's got a lot to improve on.
Yeah, we talk about on the flip side, let's talk about great. Like that pick was amazing. That was clutch. Like talk about like him just kind of seeing that situation, diving. I mean, then just going all in on that football in terms of making that cut and that read. Can you just talk about like that play, how it changed the game, and just his play throughout
Yeah,
the game?
Christian Gary has been one of those guys for Notre Dame all year where he's been. If you watch the game, you see like a lot of hit or miss. You see him getting beat one-on-one, having some pass interference penalties. He made a big pick six against USC in the final regular season game. But last night on that specific play, you saw him on that wide receiver, and he was playing inside coverage, and he basically shut down any type of inside route. His head was barely turned around when Aller threw the ball, and he just made a heck of a play on it. Like, there's nothing else you can say. And he's kind of a guy where he probably would still be starting, but they've had Benjamin Morrison, starting cornerback, go down this year. Christian Gray. I mean, the other side, number 15, Leonard Moore, true freshman at cornerback. And those guys, especially if they, get to play the Buckeyes next week, they're going to be tested with obviously Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Heck, if they play Texas with Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond, like, they're going to be tested a lot more than they were tested last night with those Penn State wide receivers.
Yeah, speaking, that's good. That's a good segue. Speaking on Ohio State, they're playing. They got a great match. That's a big matchup. Ohio State versus Texas Longhorns. For you, what is the key matchup in this game that you want to see?
Yeah, I think it's the Texas offense versus the Ohio State defense. Texas defense has dudes on that side of the ball at all three levels. They got Colin Simmons and Trey Moore at the DNs. Anthony Hill Jr. is a heck of a linebacker. Jahdae Barron won the award for best defensive back of the year. Andrew Makuba on the other side. So they got dudes on defense, and they'll do their best at shutting down Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and those guys. It'll be tough, but they're going to do their best. On the other side of the ball, though, Ohio State's defense is playing lights out these past two games, especially against an offense like Oregon. The fact that we saw that game in the Rose Bowl and the wide receivers Oregon trots out there, they could not get open against those guys. Dylan Gabriel, a very accurate quarterback, didn't have time to throw the ball. So you're going to need – Texas' offensive line is going to need to give Quinn Ewers time to throw the ball, first and foremost. Texas is going to have to get something out of their running game, which is going to be tough to do because they put up 52, 54 yards against Arizona State. It's going to be tough to do against Ohio State. And Quinn Ewers is going to have to make some plays. His wide receivers are going to have to make some plays. It's going to be tough because every level of that Ohio State defense is ridiculous. I mean, you got Caleb Downs at safety. You've got Denzel Burke, Igbenogson on the other side of DBs. You got Jack Sawyer, JTT. I mean, you just rattled off all these names. Cody Simon, Tyleik Williams. I mean, these dudes are future NFL players. They've been playing and they've been starting at Ohio State for 2 to 3 years now. And so they're familiar with this Jim Knowles defense. And for our mind, we always talk about it on our podcast, Jim Knowles, best defensive coordinator in the country. And he's going to throw out some looks, and it's going to confuse Ewers. And I think that's just where Ohio State's going to have a huge edge on that side of the ball. It's hard for me to see Texas put up a lot of points in this game.
What about the matchup of Texas defense against TreVeyon Henderson? He's playing good football, and Texas haven't done great with stopping a run like that. So you're going against an animal. And Henderson.
They had trouble with Scattaboo in that Peach Bowl. And TreVeyon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, they're 1A and 1B back there. Henderson has got a ton of speed when he gets in the open field. The sketchy part of Ohio State's team has been their offensive line because they've had some injuries too on that offensive line. And like I said, if Texas DL, they can get some push and they can force Ohio State into some, second and third and longs, that'll help their defense out a lot. But if they start getting pushed on that offensive line and Henderson and Judkins are ripping off 4 to 5 yards a carry, that's going to open up the passing game a lot more for Will Howard. You can't cover it. I mean, I don't know how you cover Jeremiah Smith. The dude being 19 years old, a true freshman,
crazy,
looking the way he looks and playing the way he plays. Like, you shouldn't be able to do that. And Emeka Egbuka would be the wide receiver number 1 for 95% of the other teams in football. And he's happy playing second fiddle. Like, he's going to be open a lot more because of Jeremiah Smith on the other side. So it's tough, man. Like, it's tough to see Texas getting it done because Ohio State just has so many dang weapons.
Yeah, my Michigan love hates talking about Ohio State.
I know.
It does, because it's the truth. Though. I've always said this about one thing about I'm an Ohio State fans. I'm gonna get your flowers. Something about them and wide receivers, man. They don't just have one. They have a plethora of
Yeah.
wide receivers every year. Like I'm serious, and it's grade A. It's grade A wide receivers that do well on Sundays.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Jeremiah Smith is something. I saw the Oregon game. I was like, good God.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like in the first, was it the first quarter, the first half? Like he was already putting up old school John Madden numbers.
Yeah, I think 120, 130 yards in the first half.
It was insane. So for you, in your opinion, would you say Ohio State, out of all the teams that you see in the college playoffs, are they playing the best football?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I just think unless Chip Kelly and Ryan Day decide to go back to whatever that game plan was against Michigan and try to run it up the middle 40 times, like trying to prove you're tougher than someone, like we've said for so long, Ohio State wanted to prove that they were Michigan-like and they were tough and physical for so long that they forgot, like, that's just not who they are. They have so many weapons on the outside and in the backfield. Like, just toss the rock around, man. Like, those guys will be open. You've got a quarterback who can throw the ball pretty well. So for whatever they tried to do against Michigan, props to them for saying, like, flipping the switch and saying, we're not going to do that against Tennessee. We're not going to do that against Oregon. Texas defense is going to be tougher than both of those two teams. And so I just think, though, if they continue with that game plan and if they bring their A game, their A game is better than everybody else's A game. And I've said, too, in my prediction on the game, I think they could even bring their A- B+ game and beat Texas in this game.
Dang. So all right, I guess another question, because, Day's always been on the hot seat. Well, for national media, he's been on the hot seat. Does he have to win this game, or is his job already safe?
I mean, his job's already safe. It's kind of like James Franklin. Like, the dude's, I don't even know his record. It's like 67-7.
It's a crazy record.
I mean, he's winning 90% of his games at Ohio State. So who's going to do better than that? The fans, though, national media and Ohio State fans, like, that's kind of the mantra that this team has taken on. Like, basically everybody outside that locker room, even their own fans included. It's just kind of us against the world, and we don't care about anybody else's opinion except for ours. We know what we can do. We know what we can provide. And I think they've kind of rallied around Ryan Day on the fact that there's just, there are some crazy fans out there. People take it way too seriously, and they get, now that you got social media and stuff, you can get on there and you feel like you can say whatever you want. You can threaten people and threaten to do stuff. It's just like, why are we taking this that seriously? But, Ryan Day's got some threats. His family's got some threats. It's no secret. And I think the team is just rallying around him. They're quieting all the outside noise. But with that being said, they go out and they lose this game to Texas as a 6-point favorite. That'll be tough. That'll be tough for Ohio State fans to swallow. And, coupled with, a fourth straight loss to Michigan. It's going to be tough. Like, I don't foresee it happening, but if they do, it's a crazy game, man. The football is shaped oddly and it bounces in ways you don't expect it to bounce. And so it's, anything can happen. In Texas, come out there and they could all of a sudden find their groove like Ohio State has and light them up. But it's, that would be the national discourse on Ryan Day, and the regional discourse from, Columbus people would be very interesting.
I think it's crazy. His record is insane. They got to the semis. They're playing, another blue blood caliber team. I think he should be safe easily. I don't think it should be any discord period over it. It was like this wild, and I'm gonna use my Michiganism, but it used to annoy me when folks used to talk about like Harbaugh, like he hasn't won the big game or whatever. And I'm like, dude, do y'all remember before Harbaugh we were at? Like, can you stop it? Like, we need to win. We should be beating Ohio State. Like, we weren't even winning 10 games. We're in 10 games again. Like, pump your brakes. Like, know where you're at before, because I think people forget, like, it's not easy. It's the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Like, whoever coach you get coming in may be worse than Day. You just say that record is insane. You just don't know. Everybody's not Urban Meyer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have that transition.
That's the issue with Ohio State is like they have the highest winning percentage in college football history. Like,
Yeah.
so they don't have periods like Michigan had with Brady Hoke, right?
Yeah.
They don't have periods like Notre Dame had with Charlie Weiss or anything like that. Like Urban Meyer, Jim Tressel, I mean, John Cooper, like they won and they all won their games. The expectation at Ohio State, you got to win. You got to beat Michigan, first of all, and you got to win national championships. And that's the bottom line. And they haven't won one since 2014. So to them, that's a drought. And they obviously, you know, I think their expectations are probably a little too high. But again, they do have the most talent in the country. Like
I know.
They paid a lot of money for these guys. And they paid a lot of money to keep a lot of these guys around. That's the thing. And when everybody knows you have the most talented roster and you go out and lose a game like you did to Michigan, it can only be for one reason. It can only be for coaching, right? So it's just not a good look for him. But I'm with you. I think he should be safe. But I'm just saying, like, you know how the talking heads will be. They'll be out in full force if he loses this game tonight.
Yeah, they'll use that talking point, what you just mentioned about they paid for everything, right? Because that was a talking point during the preseason. It was like Ohio State better get to the championship game because they forked over the most money for all these players for the NIL.
Yeah, national championship or bust.
Yeah, exactly. So I know I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
So who do you have advancing to the championship game and why?
I got Ohio State. We talk a lot about the betting side of things there, and one of the first bets I put out last week was Ohio State minus 5.5. And I'm gonna ride the train. I'm gonna hop on it, man. Like they just look unstoppable. And then on the other side, Texas just hasn't looked overly impressive against Clemson or Arizona State.
They did.
And
they
then,
have not.
They played a very weak schedule for SEC standards this year, and in the two games they played against tough teams, Georgia, they lost both of them. So it's like I said, it's really hard for me to see Texas marching the ball down the field, putting up points on Ohio State's defense, who gives up 12 points per game. And I think Ohio State has too much firepower on offense for a talented Texas defense. Like they are talented, but I still think it's just too much for them to overcome.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to agree with you, but I agree with you.
It's tough.
It's not. It's tough. It's really tough because it's like it's crazy because I watched Texas when they went to the Big House and smacked us. They smacked Michigan, and I was like, yeah, this team is pretty good.
Yeah.
But we weren't playing good football at that time. We weren't playing good football either. But so when I saw them recently, to your point, I was like, oh, this is not the same team I saw earlier in the season. They have a lot of holes, especially. And then when I watched I watched the Arizona State game, and they just looked so discombobulated in that game. Even though they won, they should have been. They looked like they were going to dominate, and then all of a sudden it just like halted.
Yeah,
like they were just making mistakes. They just weren't playing clean football. So yeah, I'm with you. I just think that going into, if we're just being truly objective to it, like going into this game, Ohio State look better. They look way more dominant. So you just have to go. I would definitely lean on Ohio State. So knowing that what this matchup entails and what these two teams have in terms of skill set, talent, do you believe that then? Because I'm kind of going this direction because like I said, I don't want to say Ohio State's going to win a national championship, but would you say like the winner of this game wins the national championship, or do you feel like Notre Dame still has a good chance to knock off either of these teams, or is it one team easier than the other?
Yeah, I think I saw some projected lines out there that Notre Dame would be 2.5-point underdogs to Texas and about 9.5-point underdogs to Ohio State, and that seems like a lot to me. But I know eventually you got to think that some of these Notre Dame injuries are going to catch up to them, especially on the lines. And especially going against, a team like Ohio State who's good in the trenches. But I said from the beginning of the playoff, if a team is going to give Ohio State troubles, it'll be a team like Notre Dame because they play very similarly to what Michigan does.
Yeah, that's true.
The defense is very similar to what Michigan does. And again, it all depends on Ohio State's game plan. Like are they going to try to be a physical team and out physical you, or are they going to try to just use their weapons and just skill you to death? I think every Notre Dame fan right now is probably cheering for Texas tonight because deep down in their heart, they believe they got a better chance against Texas. Even if Texas were to go out and beat Ohio State and look impressive doing it, right? I think they still think they got a better chance against Texas in that game. But, Texas Notre Dame will be a solid matchup. My gut reaction on a Notre Dame Ohio State matchup is it just might be too much for Notre Dame to overcome, and you could see, Ohio State pull away from them. But I think either way, right now, if you're betting, some of your hard-earned money, and you see a line out there for Ohio State to win it all, that's probably a pretty good bet in my eyes right now.
But you know what though? That's a good point though. I didn't think about that because initially I was like, oh yeah, Ohio State could probably win it all, right? Mentally,
Yeah.
I did think that. But when you say it that way, I feel like Ohio State does, and this has been the last couple of years. It's just the truth. I'm not saying this isn't an Ohio State hater. This is just the truth. When you out-bully them, they do weather away like that. All the flash and stuff. When you bully them, you say, you know what? Give me your big uglies against my big uglies, and let's go and let's see what happens. They tend to kind of play your style. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So I do agree. I do think that you kind of swayed it to a point where I do think if Notre Dame plays Ohio State, and this is not being me hating Ohio State. I'm actually being real. If they play Ohio State, just because of that comparison, yeah, I can see it. And especially you got DBs too. Like Notre Dame has great DBs too. So
yeah,
it does kind of work out a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean the same thing with Texas too. Is kind of like Notre Dame plays a similar style to Georgia. Georgia gave Texas a lot of troubles too. So I'm not counting Notre Dame out by any means. I think just kind of with the fact that they've weathered so many injuries to so many key places on the roster and gotten to 14-1 and gotten to the national championship is a win in of itself. But that fan base is starving for that first natty since 1988. So you can't tell them anything different.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, you gave me hope now. I appreciate you.
Hey,
Tyler, before we let you go, man, again, let our listeners and viewers know how they can catch your content, how they can catch you on social media as well.
Yeah, man. Go to Apple, Spotify, type in Always Talking Ball podcast. We're on there. Got tons of episodes on there. YouTube, we're growing. Type in Always Talking Ball podcast again. On X, we're at Always Talk Ball. And so we love interacting with people on there. Instagram, TikTok, put out some videos and everything. Follow me at Tyler Nohe, and then my buddy Lance Barton, who's a co-host. Follow him on Twitter as well. And we appreciate it, man. We appreciate you having me on. Love talking ball.
Oh man, thank you for being on. I'm gonna try. Now, know what? You got me getting hit back to college football. So I'm gonna try to get you back on again.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Saved, and I'm already subscribed to all your content.
Appreciate it.
All of my YouTube channels. So I get updates in terms of when your podcast comes on. So I'm going to definitely be pulling in and paying attention. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, Tyler. Have a great one. All right.
You too, man. Anytime.
All right. Bye. All right. That was dope, y'all. That was amazing. That's good. See, Tyler gave me hope. Now I'm excited about if Ohio State does win. They could still lose to. Let me take this off. They could still lose to Notre Dame because I'm so anti. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm so anti Ohio State. I won't lie to y'all. I am. I'm very anti. That is me being, but now that's me hating, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool. I will own that, Ohio State fans. I will own that because one thing, I'm glad we beat y'all, but I don't want y'all to have that feeling like, oh, we beat y'all, Michigan. And then now you feel good about winning the national championship. I want you to lose to Michigan, and I also want you to have your heart to be heartbroken when you lose your national championship game. Now I feel good because knowing you lost to us, and then you lost the championship. So, and then you lost to another blue blood squad. You lost to Notre Dame too, which was our semi rivals. But I don't hate Notre Dame. But I do hate Ohio State. I do. I grew up watching Rocket Ishmael, so I'm cool with him. I don't like you guys though. I don't like you guys. I don't have anything nice to say about Ohio State other than Marvin Harrison Jr. I did like him, and that was hard for me to say. I do like Marvin Harrison Jr. But that's because I like his father, though. Not you. Again, not because I like Ohio State. Anyway, appreciate y'all for tuning in. Before we end the show out, make sure you check us out at 4 p.m. We'll pull up for our Commanders versus Buccaneers NFL wildcard round preview show featuring Tony McGee's Pro Football plus his Commanders reporter Donna Hopkins. It'll be streaming live on our YouTube, X, IG, and Facebook accounts. You can also subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and other podcast platforms. Just like the Urban Sports Scene. Also follow us on X at Urban Sports Scene, IG, and TikTok at Urban Sports Scene. And like our Urban Sports Scene Facebook page. Again, if you're on YouTube right now, hit that red subscribe button. All right, like the video. Just do it. Don't waste any time. Just do it. It's cool. You can do it. All right. And also, again, our website, you can go there, which is www.urbansportscene.com. All right, man. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. This was dope. It was good to get my college football energy back because I didn't talk about it in a while now. I do like college football because I like college sports regardless. I gotta start talking about college basketball too because I love the purity of collegiate sports. Pros get kind of like arrogant and whatnot. So you already know how I feel about that. Anyway, you've been listening to the Urban Sports Scene for ages. And Yiddy deuces. I'm out.
Peace.